is the embodiment of the aspirations of the ordinary people which all of us seek to serve, framed eloquently so in the Africa that we want, that we envisage to unfold in 2063. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency, we are all confident that the completion of the first decade of the implementation of Agenda 2063, which primarily focus on convergence, have been an important building block towards the second decade of implementation, which speaks about the need for acceleration and of the implementation of that type of agenda. It is therefore our submission as South Africa that the Summit of the Future presents a unique corridor, ladies and gentlemen, to ensure that we do things differently with more urgency, that we identify decisive action that will ensure that a positive impact in the lives of ordinary people are made, and that we, as a generation of the 21st century, presents a very unique and different opportunities for the new generation to deepen the transformation of the international system of power, governance, finance, debt, trade, and technology, so that they would be able to work for all countries of the world and ensure that developing countries such as ourselves are not left out of opportunities that it envisaged to present. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, following the AU Executive Council retreat in Kigali, Rwanda in October 2023, all Africa's foreign ministers were mandated to continue to provide the much needed political leadership and advocacy as we deliver the decade of acceleration of the AU Agenda 2063 from 2024 to 2033. It was agreed at that retreat, ladies and gentlemen, that the second 10-year implementation plan should be based on Africa's reinvigorated engagement with, in particular, our development partners, as well as present a unique opportunity for Africa to take its place in the multilateral fora with international organizations within the UN system and beyond. The Summit of the Future, therefore, presents a further opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to make good on promises made and achieve the development, peace, and security, and more importantly, human rights objectives, which Africa have canvassed, have engaged on, that will entail and encapsulate and realize the betterment of the African continent for all of our people, and by implication, the rest of the world. In this regard, the ownership and domestication of the AU Agenda 2063 calls on all African citizens and its partners on the continent, in the diaspora, and it includes all state and non-state actors to join hands in delivering on Africa's blueprint. Hence, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency, the format, structure, and identified participants for today's seminar should aptly explore how the Summit of the Future and its key outcome document entitled The Path of the Future can address Africa's needs through Agenda 2063, second 10-year implementation plan, and related AU flagship projects. In contextualizing, therefore, the discussions for our seminar today, we should all be mindful of and remind ourselves about the dialectical convergence which the SDG 2030 and Agenda 2063 presents to ourselves as participants. There should therefore be an ongoing commitment to ensure that we harmonize these structures and processes related to deliver on both these very important agendas. It is our recommendation as South Africa, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, that deliberations of today should be contextualized against the backdrop of supporting the decision of the AU Commission Chairperson and the UNSG to agree on the two agendas with one plan. Therefore, the implementation of the PEC of the future and at the global level should be advocated and championed against the relevant continental, regional, and domestic frameworks in place so as to ensure, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, the heightening of synergies and coherence relating thereto. A key element of the PEC of the future is working towards a new agenda for peace, which is a vision on how to strengthen multilateral action for peace in the current global environment. The recent reports indicated that more civilians were killed in armed conflicts over the last year than during any other year for more than a decade. That this, ladies and gentlemen, is our submission. It's an antithesis to the African Agenda 2063, which amongst others advocate for the cessation of hostilities in order to ensure the African blueprint becomes a reality indeed in our lifetime. As South Africa, we have consistently pursued a foreign policy embedded, fortified, ladies and gentlemen, on peace diplomacy. A foreign policy which was focused on the political settlement of disputes through the attainment of just, sustainable, and lasting peace, while simultaneously, ladies and gentlemen, and probably more important, to ensure that we address the root causes of conflict. We have done this in conforming with the principles of the UN Charter and international law. It is our submission, ladies and gentlemen, that the failure to uniformly and fairly implement international law in all conflict situations globally have substantively weakened the normative frameworks of international accountability and have made the world less safe today than yesteryear. South Africa would continue to advocate for a world where the use of force, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, is replaced through the instruments of dialogue and negotiations. A world where the use of force is actually prohibited and not only regulated. These principles, we hope, through your diligent participation, would be reaffirmed in the summit of the future. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our responsibility to use this once-in-a-generation summit to use its respective platforms and outcomes to address the injustices of the past, the challenges and opportunities of the present, and the objectives of the future. To leave a world better than how we actually have found it. I wish to conclude, ladies and gentlemen, with a quote from a prominent Pan-Africanist, the first president of Mozambique and leader of Frelimo, Samora Machel. I quote, "We should be mindful that international solidarity is not the act of charity. It is in fact an act of unity between allies fighting on different terrains towards the same objective." The foremost of these objectives is to aid the development of humanity to the highest level possible, unquote. Thank you very much, Program Director.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister Bottas, for those opening remarks. I will now take the opportunity to invite Mr. Nelson Mufo, who's the resident coordinator of the United Nations in South Africa, to make his presentation.
Good morning, and thank you heartily, Program Director, for the introduction and also for moderating this event. Permit me, Excellencies, to start, of course, by acknowledging and conveying the gratitude of the entire UN system to the Deputy Minister, and by extension as well to the Minister of DIRCO for their commitment and leadership in these trying times. Excellencies, both the Global Dean and the Dean of the African Diplomatic Corps, your presence is also very much appreciated, as well as all the other excellencies that are in the room from the African Diplomatic Corps and the co-chairs of the intergovernmental process that is currently seeking to have an outcome on the Summit of the Future. I thank you as well. In the room as well, we acknowledge the rest of the UN family that is accompanying me today to engage on this really important matter with civil society, women, young people, as well as the academic institutions. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning and happy Women's Month to all the ladies in the room and also online. As we gather here today, we do so on borrowed time. We are at a point in history where the decisions and actions leaders, governments, private sector, and civil society actors, as well as individuals, take will shape our world of today and the world of tomorrow and for generations to come. The United Nations Secretary General proposed the Summit of the Future to push for a more just and equitable international system, one that will ensure that developing countries have an equal voice in global decision-making so that we can collectively face head-on the persistent, emerging, and anticipated global challenges that are ahead of us. And this is all the more important because 79 years following the consensus arrived at to establish a post-war multilateral approach, including the United Nations system and the Bretton Woods Institutes, it is time to course correct after reflecting on what has worked and what isn't working. So the Summit of the Future presents a unique platform to reaffirm our commitment to the principles of the United Nations and to transform our shared aspirations into concrete actions for the well-being of people and planet. The summit recognizes that power relations need to change to reflect and adapt to the realities of today and to deliberately shape our collective response to global challenges in the years ahead. Therefore, we cannot waste this opportunity to address long-standing concerns of Africa and other developing countries, leading to achieving our shared agenda. As the Deputy Minister said, between the 2030 agenda and the Agenda 2063, we have two agendas, but one plan, which needs to be implemented. And South Africa's unwavering leadership in this regard is not only noted, but wholeheartedly appreciated. All other member states, starting from the Africa group, need to also embrace the fact that they stand to benefit from a more equitable and inclusive course correction of the global multilateral institutions, which also require countries to collaborate better with one another to solve issues of peace, security, and advancing sustainable development. Therefore, Honorable Deputy Minister, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Regrettably, I would have to point out that progress towards attaining the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development has been marked by disappointment and setbacks. Inequality has widened, poverty has increased, despite concerted efforts to fight it. And as such, the aspired prosperity for all remains at risk. We face a future with complex global challenges, which are both multifaceted and interconnected. Some talk of a polycrisis. At the heart of the Summit of the Future is the need to immediately advance an appropriately financed rescue plan around the Sustainable Development Goals and the necessary climate interventions. As part of the package, which we've also heard about and we'll hear more about, is going to be a declaration on future generations and also a global digital compact. This package will become a testament to our collective resolve to ensure a sustainable, equitable, and just world for all. And once adopted, the package will be annexed to the outcome of the summit itself, which is the Pact for the Future, our commitment to current and future generations to working better multilaterally. The Pact of the Future will be structured around sustainable development and financing for development, international peace and security, science, technology, innovation, and digital cooperation. Also, youth and future generations and transforming global governance. This pact delivers and hopefully will lead to not only political direction for transformation, but an agreement to reforming fundamentally the global governance and international financial architecture. Honorable Deputy Minister, Excellencies, with South Africa's support, as well as ongoing active engagement by the African Group, it will be a precedent-setting pact which must be met with precedent-setting action and financing. This outcome needs to be inclusive, equitable, bold, and brave. And not only the outcome, but the action that we collectively take to advance this. This means we need a multilateral system that is responsive to and commensurate with the challenges the world, particularly the challenges the African continent is facing and its people. A system that can help us deliver the well-being of people, transform their livelihoods while safeguarding our planet. A system that can mitigate uncertainty and instability and contribute with effectiveness to a more prosperous, peaceful, and sustainable world. Also a system that is networked and inclusive, that leverages the potential of young people as well as women, as it fosters collaboration across sectors between governments and the private sector, as well as civil society. The Secretary General often refers to networked multilateral cooperation. The Pact for the Future must therefore lead to an arrangement that reflects the world of today and no longer the world of 1945. It is time to, as Deputy Minister said, to reinvigorate and recalibrate the multilateral system, and we owe that not only to ourselves, but also to future generations. That is why this seminar, which is being co-organized with DIRCO, and thank you again, Deputy Minister and colleagues from DIRCO for hosting us, as well as with the University of Pretoria, comes at the right time. It focuses on an important question: what is in all of this for Africa? And in the midst of a renewed scramble for Africa, this points to the fact that our beloved continent is a powerhouse and an economic hub. And with its youthful population and dynamic societies, cultures, and resources, it stands at the forefront of any transformative effort to course correct and take the world into future. Our continent is home to some of the world's fastest growing economies, innovative solutions, and resilient communities. We have an opportunity to lead by example, integrating the principles of the Pact for the Future and turning them into policies and governance frameworks that will benefit people on the continent. And by doing so, we can demonstrate that sustainable development is not just a goal, but a reality that can be achieved through a whole of society whole of economy effort, and with unwavering commitment. But that said, Africa also faces extraordinary challenges. We need to urgently accelerate progress towards achievement of the SDGs and Agenda 2063. And the backdrop against which we're existing is one that sees more frequent and intense climate shocks, unsustainable debt, conflicts, food insecurity challenges, pandemics, human displacements, technological risks, misinformation and disinformation, as well as the digital gap. And this exists alongside persisting poverty, inequalities, and youth unemployment. Therefore, all of these should really encapsulate Africa's priorities for the future of the Summit of the Future and the role that African countries will play, not only at the summit, but in the multilateral system and the UN system going forward. We need to shift from being a continent often perceived through the lens of aid and assistance to one that is a force to reckon with, a dynamic force to be reckoned with in a world that is seeking global peace, security, and sustainable development. African countries have already been at the forefront of UN peacekeeping missions and conflict resolution interventions, with South Africa playing a leading role. African countries are already promoting human rights and democracy, but much more needs to be done. Africa remains vulnerable to climate change, but is also a continent that can be part of the solutions to climate change, that will ensure that extreme weather events are appropriately responded to, anticipated, that food insecurity and water scarcity challenges are overcome by leveraging the potential that we have, be it with regards to our critical minerals, our preserved forests, and the resource we have, both thermal, wind, and solar for renewable energy. Immense potentials that need to be leveraged. But above all, it is the human potential that we need to focus on. The youth potential, because this demographic dividend presents an opportunity to be harnessed and for that to be capitalized upon with and by young people. And Deputy Minister, I hope the South African delegation to the Summit of Future will include a couple of youth delegates as well, mindful of the content of the summit itself and the aspects on future generation. For Africa, social well-being is another key priority. Ensuring access to quality healthcare, quality education, quality social services for all. We also already talked about reducing inequalities and ensuring we have resilient communities. And education also being the theme of the African Union for this year is a critical area where Africa can play a lead because it helps us fight poverty, tackle inequalities, and create a pathway for employment. And by doing this, we will ensure every African child has the ability not only to be educated, but to meaningfully contribute to transforming the world. So the question remains, what more can be done for Africa's priorities to be realized and capitalized at the Summit of the Future? This includes, as the Deputy Minister already said, promoting peace and security. This includes ensuring Africa has a permanent seat with veto power on the UN Security Council. This, of course, also includes delivering on financing commitments for sustainable development, making sure promises made are promises kept, and that climate mitigation as well as adaptation financing is also available. And I already underlined the importance of unlocking the potential of Africa's young people. And we achieve this through global solidarity, dignity and respect being provided to Africa, and African resources being judiciously utilized and not scrambled for. And also by having inclusive and equitable global governance and financial arrangements. And this needs to happen urgently because the world and the challenges we're facing are also rapidly changing. The UN Secretary General, Deputy Minister, and colleagues has constantly and insistently called for a reform and revitalize multilateralism so that it reflects the realities of today and is fit to face the challenges of tomorrow. And that's why he outlined all of this vision in our common agenda, which served as a foundational blueprint for the Summit of the Future. But as we head into the Summit of the Future, we should look at it not only as the endpoint, but a catalyst of many initiatives that should flow from that and will help us change the world that we are currently living in. We must continue to coordinate our efforts for our common goals, including the two agendas, Agenda 2063 and the 2030 Agenda. And South Africa has an opportunity, Deputy Minister, as it takes on the presidency of the G20. The consecutive Global South presidencies of the G20 represents a unique opportunity for synergies and complementarity moving from India to Brazil and soon to South Africa. And South Africa must therefore leverage its global and regional leadership to act as a bridge builder and mobilize support for Africa's priorities through a successful G20 presidential process. And the convenings in New York in a month's time, including the ministerial on the G20, as well as the Summit of the Future, and its anticipated outcome presents us with a good platform to be able to build on. And all member states, those in the room and those who are not in the room, have their part to play. And the Africa Group has a particular responsibility in leading that charge. Allow me, therefore, to close once more with the words of the UN Secretary General when he said to civil society entities in Nairobi recently as a pre-conference to the Summit of the Future that the Summit of the Future is a chance to push progress on the issues that matter most to us, a chance that cannot be missed. Our fight is one fight, creating a better world for current and future generations and ensuring we have a bright future for all. Therefore, let's together seize this opportunity and make the Summit of the Future one that counts and not one that leads to another outcome and promises that are not kept. And Africa has a responsibility and an opportunity to take the lead in this regard. I wish you all fruitful deliberations over the coming hours, and we look forward to taking forward the outcomes of these deliberations into the Summit of the Future, but much more importantly, to fostering collaboration in South Africa, with South Africa and beyond for people and planet. Thank you very much.
Thanks to the resident coordinator of the United Nations in South Africa for those remarks. It is my honor now to invite His Excellency Ambassador Nzapayeke, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the Central African Republic and Dean of the African Diplomatic Corps in South Africa. Ambassador.
Good morning. Honorable Elvin Botes, Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Excellency Ambassador Mabongo, Deputy Director General, Global Governance and Continental Agenda, His Excellency Sali Omar Abdou, Ambassador of the State of Eritrea, Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, His Excellency Kiwete, High Commissioner of Namibia, His Excellency Andreas Peschke, Ambassador of the Federal Republic of Germany, His Excellency Nelson Mofu, Residence Coordinator of the United Nations in South Africa, Excellencies, Ambassador High Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be very, very short. First of all, allow me to commend on behalf of my colleagues, all African heads of diplomatic missions accredited to South Africa, to commend the organizers of this important workshop, whose purpose is to look at what is in the upcoming UN summit of the future for our continent. Indeed, what is in this summit for us Africans? That is a key question we are expected to reflect on before the African delegations go to the summit. Are we Africans not often accused by our citizens to attend international gatherings without being prepared, without putting forward its benefits for our continent? The importance of the upcoming summit makes the initiative to meet this morning crucial. We hope that the result of our discussions will help the integration of African concern in the future pact for the future. The African continent has a strategic position on the map of the world. In addition of its central geographic position, the mineral resources of the continent are immense, and its growing population vibrant. Nevertheless, many challenges are yet to be tackled. Among those challenges, I will focus here mainly on one. Among those challenges, we have the issue of peace and security. None of the 5 African regions, as well as our 6th region, is conflict-free. In West Africa, many countries are under siege of jihadist groups. In North Africa, Libya is still a source of conflicts since the assassinations of late Gaddafi. And tensions still persist around the issue of Western Sahara. In East Africa, Sudan has become a serious threat for the region. Troubles persist in Somalia. In Southern Africa, conflicts are ongoing in the eastern region of DRC, that's part of the SADC, and in Cabo Delgado in Mozambique. In Central African region, many countries remain unstable. There are still some conflicts. Central African Republic, in Chad, and Cameroon. The growing peace and security challenges in many countries on the continent, added to lasting governance matters, today do not permit the continent to implement its development agenda on a satisfactory manner. I'm talking about our key agendas, Agenda 2063, and the very crucial one, the Africa Free Trade Area. The upcoming summit will be beneficial for the continent only if you are able to make our voice heard. For that, a strong African Union is needed. A better political and economic cooperation among African states will be a key factor. And the objective of African unity should remain high on our agenda. None of the superpowers in the world will respect us if we continue to be divided, and if we do not control the value chain of our minerals. Potentially, with its immense natural resources and its vibrant and growing population, Africa should be able to influence the conduct of business in the world. I call on leading economies, such as South Africa, to take their responsibility and help drive the continent to a position where it will be able to play a major role in world affairs. The upcoming summit reaches out to the continent. We should not miss this opportunity. And as the deputy minister just whispered in my ears, it's not a secret, it's important. We should lead this process. And I agree with him. And I thank you for your attention.
I wish to thank the ambassador, the Dean of the African Development Corps, for his statement. Excellencies, Namibia and Germany have been working for over a year now as co-facilitators of the process of the Summit of the Future, the negotiations of the Pact for the Future, which will be the outcome of the summit. And we want to congratulate them for the hard work that their delegations in New York have put into this effort. I will therefore now invite the ambassadors of Namibia and Germany to take the floor. I will start with the ambassador of Namibia, and I understand that the statement will be read by the Deputy High Commissioner, Ms. Aino Humphrey. Please take the floor.
The program director, Honorable Ambassador Mabongo, Honorable Alvin Bottes, Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Mr. Mufu, Resident Coordinator of the United Nations in South Africa, His Excellency Zapayeke, Ambassador of Central African Republic and Dean of Africa Diplomatic Corps, His Excellency Andrew Page, Ambassador of Federal Republic of Germany in South Africa, distinguished panelists and guests, Your Excellencies, members of Diplomatic Corps, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. It is my distinct honor to stand before you this morning to present Namibia's contribution to the United Nations Summit of the Future. As it was alluded to, Namibia is proud to be a co-facilitator together with the Federal Republic of Germany for the upcoming Summit of the Future. Let me first appreciate and extend our gratitude to the Department of International Relations and Cooperation for their effort in organizing this seminar, a perfect platform to create awareness on the Summit of the Future. Program Director, most of you, if not all in this auditorium, may agree that the Summit of the Future will be held just at the right time, when the world needs a reset button from the polarized landscape that is currently at play. Therefore, it was a welcoming development when member states of the United Nations agreed to convene the Summit of the Future. The idea originated when the world leaders met in 2020 to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. They adopted the UN 75th Declaration that contained 12 overarching commitments, setting out a vision for achieving the future we want and the UN we need. They requested the UN Secretary General to make recommendations on how to advance these commitments. This led to the Secretary General producing our Common Agenda report in 2021. And in this report, the SG proposed the holding of a Summit of the Future. Member states agree and decided to convene in the Summit of the Future from 22nd to 23rd September 2024. The Summit of the Future will be a significant opportunity for the international community to pledge commitments to address the fragmented world, restore trust among member states, and frame the path ahead toward most inclusive, sustainable, and prosperous world for all. The summit will provide a platform for international community and the world leaders to forge a new international consensus, establish a new global agreement on multilateral solutions, and pledge their commitment on how to deliver a better present and safeguard for the future. The summit will explore avenues to enhance cooperation, strengthening and revitalize the multilateral system to be fit for purpose and effectively respond to the multiple challenges facing the world today. This summit will further provide pivotal opportunity to restore trust and show that international cooperation can effectively address both current and emerging challenges if we collectively push or pull in the same direction. The international community has already defined the what is needed for collective development through numerous agreements and commitments, starting with the UN Charter, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Rio Declaration, the 2030 Agenda, the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, and many others. Program Director, the summit is expected to adopt a consensual, high-level, ambitious, and action-oriented, intergovernmentally negotiated outcome document entitled Pact for the Future. The Pact constitutes a chapeau and 5 chapters. As it was alluded to, the first chapter will cover the sustainable development and finance for development, while chapter 2 will cover issue of international peace and security. Chapter 3 will cover science, technology, innovation, and digital cooperation. Chapter 4 will cover the issue of youth and future generation. And while the chapter 5 will cover the issue of transforming global governance. The pact will address a multitude of issues aimed to reinvigorate and reinforce the 3 pillars of the United Nations, namely the sustainable development, peace and security, and human rights. In addition to the Pact for the Futures, member states are also negotiating a global digital compact aimed at bridging the digital divide between developed and developing countries. Furthermore, member states are also finalizing negotiating on the Declaration of Future Generation. The Global Digital Compact and Declaration on Future Generation are negotiated through separate but related processes and will be annexed to the pact when intergovernmentally agreed. Program Director, we believe that the pact will not in any way or in any form replace the Agenda 2030, but a crucial waypoint to the agenda, which will outline commitment toward an inclusive and effective multilateralism and elaborate on possible solutions to address its implementation gaps and emerging risk while turbocharging action on the SDGs. In essence, the Summit of the Future will focus on the how we collaborate more effectively to achieve these aspirations and goals. It will explore ways to accelerate effort toward meeting present needs while highlighting our commitment to take tangible steps in preparing and addressing future emerging challenges and opportunities. Director of Ceremony, negotiations of the PEC are currently ongoing, and they are at an advanced stage in New York under the leadership of the permanent representatives of Namibia and Germany. The pact has gone through extensive negotiation. It was already mentioned. It started in January to June 2024, which produced the first revision, which was circulated in May 2024. And ultimately, a consolidated version also was produced, revision number 2, which was circulated to member states in 17 July 2024. The general feedback to the revision was very positive, with delegations agreeing that the text is more ambitious, concise, actionable, and appropriate for the consideration of heads of state and government. There was also a broad agreement on structure of the pact, its tone and ambition, and the level of detail in the text. As expected with every negotiation, there are various red lines. However, the co-facilitator attempted to reflect the delicate balance in both revision to call on member states to exercise flexibility, focus on the objective of the pact to maintain its ambitious with high-level nature. Among the divergent issues are reform of the international financial architecture, climate financing, special drawing rights, disarmament and maritime security, right to development, technological transfer, unilateral cohesion measures, security councils, and other related to the security councils. Director of Ceremony, therefore, it is worth stating that the success of the summit depends on the ability of member states to maintain a high level of ambition across all chapters, including concrete commitments, goals, and action, while keeping the pact concise and actionable. There's an extended call and appeal to all member states to demonstrate a collective approach that should be constructive, flexible, and disciplined, adhere to agreed principle and common goal to achieve a final consensus on the pact before the end of the 78th session. As such, current negotiation has commenced on 29th of July 2024. It's about to be concluded, and a further version is expected to be finalized next week. In conclusion, dear participant, the Summit of the Future will be a lifetime opportunity for the international community and global leaders to reaffirm their commitment to strengthen multilateralism and to forge a new international consensus on how to deliver a better and safeguard the future. Therefore, high-level attendance will demonstrate a stern zeal to mend eroded trust and vindicate that international cooperation can effectively achieve goals and tackle emerging threats and opportunities. At this critical juncture for multilateralism, we cannot afford to fail to transform global governance, else we risk a dysfunctional future marred by deepening inequality and increased conflict. Therefore, it is imperative for member states and all relevant stakeholders to continue mobilizing for consensus, high-level, transformative and ambitious, concise and actionable pact with concrete action and follow up appropriate for consideration of heads of state and government. This is the main objective. I thank you.
I wish to thank the Deputy High Commissioner of Namibia, Ms. Humphreys, and again to acknowledge the presence of the High Commissioner of Namibia also in the meeting. At this point, I will invite Ambassador Andreas Pesch, the Ambassador of the Federal Republic of Germany, who address the meeting.
Thank you very much, Program Director, Deputy Minister, DDG, Global Dean, African Dean, UN Resident Coordinator, the High Commissioner of Namibia, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I think I just want to compliment what has been said by the Deputy High Commissioner and the High Commissioner of Namibia, our co-facilitators in the process in the run-up for the Summit of the Future. Well, we are trying to work very hard, or our UN representatives in New York are trying to work very hard to come up with an operational result, to produce a genuinely transformative pact for the future at the upcoming Summit of the Future at the United Nations. And I have to say that work is very hard. If I was our UN representative, I would blame the lack of my hair on the hard work. But we are trying to help as much as possible. So thank you very much to DIRCO for organizing this seminar. And thank you to all the support by the African group to the ongoing work, trying to come up with a good final document. I think we all agree that this upcoming summit for the future is very important, and it is going to be very important for Africa as well. The consensual acceptance of the pact with its comprehensive range of topics alone would be considered a great success. To make that happen, to make it possible, is not an easy task, and it will require, as has been said, compromises from all sides, including also abandoning of existing red lines. The African group is very committed to the negotiation process, and what the group is doing very well complements the talks in New York, also the recent engagements at the African Union Peace and Security Council in Addis Ababa. So these are all important steps. I think to make the summit a win, in particular for Africa, we need to address historic imbalances and injustices at the UN that are relevant for Africa, but also the effects of global shocks which affect the African continent. I think there are three main issues for the summit, and I mean, all the issues, all the chapters are important. I would like to focus on three, and they were also laid out by the Secretary General in his report, Our Common Agenda. First, it's the reform of global governance. Second, it's the impetus for the development agenda. And third, it is effectively tackling climate change. I think on the first one, the pact is to provide an impetus for reforms of the UN system. We need an inclusive, representative, and legitimate UN system and UN institutions that reflect today's reality, but are also able to respond to today's challenges in an effective way. Some UN organs are totally outdated, as they reflect, and has been mentioned by the resident coordinator, reflect the world of 1945, when almost all of Africa was still under the colonial yoke. This is particularly true, of course, for the Security Council, where Africa is not adequately represented at all. Not yet Uhuru was the famous title of Jaramogi Oginga Odinga's autobiography, one of Kenya's foremost independence politicians. He described the conditions of his time. I think if we are honest, when it comes to the crass underrepresentation of Africa in the UN Security Council, the title of the book still applies today. But it's not only historical injustice, it is also Africa's large and growing share in world population. It is also Africa's important role as an actor in international politics and support for UN peace missions. Africa must be at the table permanently. That is a fact, and that is something we need to ensure, and we need to give an impetus also in the run-up to the summit. Time is overdue for text-based negotiations taken into account the Eslovene consensus. Of course, as we all know, for the summit, the delivery of text elements is prepared by the reform group headed by Austria and Kuwait. The input is still pending and has the potential also for further dissent. In order to achieve a breakthrough, we have to get the P5 on board. We, that is the German co-facilitator, we worked very hard on our fellow Europeans, United Kingdom and France, which are more or less on board. Lately, there have also been positive signals from the US, yet we all know that their stance also depends on the outcome of their elections. And we also need to convince China and Russia. As it is, many African states are closer to them than we are. And I'm quite honest. And we would like to encourage you to use your channels bilaterally via BRICS at the G77 to work with them. South Africa has achieved the first commitment as a BRICS presidency last year. Now we need a concrete follow-up. That is the first topic on the reform of the UN system. On the second one, we want to use the summit to speed up the implementation of the 2030 agenda and the SDGs. Currently, progress in half of the 169 targets is insufficient. Reaching the SDGs is important for all of us, but it's particularly important also for the African continent. We have to jointly look for ways for turbocharging the implementation. This is a question of financing, as has been mentioned, but also a question of making better use of other opportunities, of digital opportunities, such as artificial intelligence. On this third topic, to secure our future, the pact should also stress the importance of achieving the objectives of the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement, particularly on climate financing. Again, this is particularly important for the African continent. We all know that African countries have contributed the least to climate change, yet they are amongst the most vulnerable and suffer most. You rightfully claim financial contributions and the perspective how to develop taking a different climate-friendly path. So we, and this I say as a co-facilitator, but also as a representative of Germany in general, we are strongly committed to ensure African countries are sufficiently financially enabled for both mitigation and adaptation efforts to tackle climate change. All three goals, reforms, development, and climate change, are important. All three meet reservations and resistance. But together with Namibia, we will strive for a successful pact. We will leave no stone unturned, and I think with your help, we are going to succeed. Concerning the further process, as was outlined by the Deputy High Commissioner, the co-facilitators are preparing a REF 3, hopefully a final REF. We keep praying, huh? I think it's going to be distributed soon, by the end of the month. And then we will continue as co-facilitators to work hard to mediate between the relevant positions, and we count on your support. As we would say here in South Africa, Masi Bambisane, Bese si Pumelele. Let's work together, then we can be successful. Thank you very much.
I wish to thank Ambassador Peshke for those remarks We have now reached the end of the first part of our meeting, and we will take a break of 10 minutes for tea and coffee. During the tea break, we would want to invite all the ambassadors and representatives of embassies who are in the meeting, as well as the representatives of the UN system and youth and civil society to join the Deputy Minister in a photo opportunity. Outside, you'll be given the directions of where the photo will be taken. I also wish, before I stand down, to acknowledge the Dean of all the Diplomatic Corps, Ambassador Salih Omar Abdu, for your presence in the meeting, as well as to welcome the participants that are taking part online. We have over 60 people that are following this meeting online. With that, I would just ask that we give another round of applause to the speakers of the first session. So we will break for 10 minutes and then let's try to be back after 10:30. Thank you very much.